They said I could watch it from the comfort of my home. Wasn't that considerate? That was what the email said. Not, we're so happy to have you there. Not, please sit in the front row. Not even, you've done so much for us. Just a link. A cold, blue, underlined hyperlink to my own son's wedding. My name is Evelyn Shore 78. I was once an administrative coordinator for the city of Cedar Creek. Spent 38 years logging minutes, sorting ordinances, running 5 mayors through 3 scandals, and, for divorces, I never forgot a name. I never left a mess. I retired with a pension and a framed certificate, and I never expected to be invited to every dinner or decision after that. But this was exile. I stared at the email, checking the sender twice. Darren Shore, my only son. The subject line, for Saturday, below it, the link, below that, a smiling photo of him and Sienna in matching beige. Below that, formal ceremony begins at 4 p.m. Please be prompt on the live stream. I kept rereading one sentence. We wanted to keep the ceremony small, modern, and brand-focused. Hope you understand, brand-focused. That's what I'd become, off-brand. I closed the laptop, got up, made tea. I didn't cry. I'm long past crying. Instead, I did what I'd done every day of my life. I noted the facts. 1. I was not invited. 2. I'd heard of the engagement. Sienna posted it on Instagram before Darren called me. 3. The wedding was happening in 5 days. 4. I was funding it and I hadn't known. That last part didn't hit me until the next morning. I checked my bank app while feeding the dog. It buzzed as usual with my Tuesday pension deposit, and there it was. A withdrawal labeled Cedar Point Gardens, $47,200, cleared, 3 days ago. Cedar Point Gardens. That's the venue downtown with the rooftop terrace and the marble swan pond. It's where the former governor's daughter got married last year, where brides in rented horse-drawn carriages pass by tourists and forget their roots. It's also not cheap. I never authorized that transfer. I clicked on the transaction. It was linked to the old Shore family revocable trust, the one I'd set up with my husband Edward 25 years ago. It was meant for emergencies, tuition, maybe a small business if Darren ever stopped drifting, but I'd never touched it after Edward died. I thought Darren hadn't either. Turns out, I was wrong. I sat back, the tea forgotten. I opened the link, the live stream screen read, event scheduled Saturday 4 p.m. EST, hosted by Sienna Lung. I clicked on her profile. Public, of course, Sienna Lung, digital strategist and generational voice. 3 million followers. Her bio read, building legacy from scratch. From scratch, I scrolled. Every post was curated. Soft neutrals, gold rings, fecunded laughs. Not one family member older than 40. No parents, no roots, no wrinkles. I checked Darren's page. It had been cleaned up to no mention of me. No photos older than 2015. There was a post from last Christmas with the caption, grateful for chosen family. I remember that day, I dropped off a pecan pie and a hand-knitted scarf. Left it on their porch. No one opened the door. Chosen family. I opened my closet. Took down the blue box with our old legal files. Found the folder marked Shore Trust. The last document inside was from 2011. Before Edward's first surgery. It had a clause we'd added late, barely remembered now, tucked near the end of the document. In the event that any direct heir or dependent deliberately excludes a founding member from significant family events, as determined by reasonable interpretation, the founding member may, at their sole discretion, reclaim all control and reassess distribution. We called it the final clause. It was Edward's idea. He said it as a joke. If Darren ever turns Hollywood on us. We both laughed then. I didn't laugh now. Instead, I took out a pen and circled it, folded it, put it in my handbag. I opened the laptop again, clicked on the livestream link once more, waited for the countdown. Then I wrote Darren a message. Thank you for the link. I'll be watching closely. No emojis, no warmth. Just acknowledgement. He replied 3 hours later. Appreciate you being understanding. I stared at that sentence. The truth is, I don't need their permission to be present. I don't need their praise or their pity, but I do need something else. I need to remember who I am, and I need them to remember too. I didn't cry during the live stream. Not when the camera panned across the flower arrangements I paid for. Not when Darren took Sienna's hand and called her the family he'd always dreamed of. Not even when the string quartet played the same song my husband and I danced to at our wedding. No. The tears came 3 days later, when Finn texted me a photo. It was a screenshot of the guest list, printed and highlighted. I zoomed in and scanned for any familiar name from my husband's side. There were none. But there they were, Sienna's kindergarten friends, her high school debate partner, a woman labeled PR stylist with a star beside her name. I asked Finn why. He replied with a shrug emoji. It's more curated, he said. You wouldn't get it. He was right. I didn't. I walked to the kitchen, sat down, and opened my bank app. It took a while, forgotten passwords, shaky hands. But once I was in, the numbers hit like a slap. $47,950. Transferred out, in 2 major installments last month. No label, no note, just ... gone. I called Darren. He didn't pick up. The call rang out, twice, then a text. In meetings all day. Can I call TMRW? I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my filing cabinet, pulled out the folder labeled joint account. Sure, a dusty thing I hadn't touched since Gerald passed. And there it was, a clause, 2 signatures, mine and Gerald's, a note scribbled in my husband's handwriting, for Evelyn to access freely in case of emergency. I suppose this counted. I made an appointment at the bank. The woman behind the counter smiled too brightly. Oh, Mrs. Shore, I believe your son already spoke with our business advisor. Did he? I said. Because this isn't his account. Not fully. She hesitated, checked something on her screen. Then she stood up and fetched a manager. 10 minutes later, I had the statements in hand. The first $25,000 went to a vendor called Moss and Pearl Events, the second to Lumivo Collective. I googled both. One was a wedding planner, the other, a social media consultancy. I don't know what hurt more, that they used my money to fund the day I wasn't invited to, or that they hired people to erase me from it so beautifully. I stared at my reflection in the bank's polished window as I left. Not angry, not even sad, just ... blank. Back home. I pulled up the Livestream again, paused on a frame where Darren stood with Sienna's parents, all laughing, arms linked. There was a place for me. Physically, there had been room. They just didn't want me in the shot. That night, I didn't sleep. I reread Finn's message, reread the guest list, counted the names, counted the dollars. Then I printed the bank statements, made 3 copies, and I sent a short email to Darren. Received notice of transfers from joint account. Please clarify authorization. Mom, to Sienna. Congratulations. I see your stylist made the list. To myself, you are not invisible. The next morning, Finn came over after school. He dropped his bag, opened the fridge like always, then noticed the printouts on the table. Is this about the money? He asked, chewing a protein bar. Double quotes. Yes, I said. They said you approved it. I didn't. He looked away. I thought you were invited. I wasn't. Silence. Then he pulled out his phone. I can show you the table plan. I have a picture. He scrolled. Showed me. Room for 98 people. I stared at it. Names circled in red. Annotations. End there. At the bottom, a note in Darren's handwriting. No, Evelyn. Keeps optics clean. Finn read it. His lips moved, but no words came out. He looked like he might be sick. I didn't touch him. Didn't say it was okay. Because it wasn't. You should go, I said. He nodded, and as the door clicked shut behind him, I picked up the copy of the table plan, folded it, filed it right behind the bank statements, next to the clause. But that wasn't the end of it. That night, around 11:40 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a message from someone I hadn't heard from in nearly 2 years. Zara, Sienna's maid of honor. Hi, Evelyn. I know I probably shouldn't be messaging. Just wanted to say I'm sorry. You deserved better. I stared at the message, typed, deleted, typed again, then finally wrote, why are you saying that? Her reply came fast, because I saw the email Sienna sent to the planning team. She asked to keep the guest list legacy free. No one over 70 said it was better for the brand story. Legacy-free. I wrote back, do you still have that email? Another buzz. A screenshot arrived, dated 3 months ago. We're trying to maintain a clean generational narrative. Gen Z plus millennial only. Evelyn is sweet, but doesn't align with the vibe. Sweet, they called me sweet. I printed it, labeled it, legacy-free directive. I added it to the folder. The last thing I did that night was go back to my closet. I opened the blue box where Gerald's old film camera lay, the one he carried to every family gathering, the one that captured our last photo as three, me, him, and Darren, on Finn's 5th birthday. Inside that camera, I found the roll we never developed. I placed it on top of the documents. Then, I picked up a pen. On the outside of the folder, I wrote 2 words, new clause. I wasn't going to yell, or beg, or ask. I was going to document, because if I've learned anything from 40 years of watching careless men trip over legal language, it's this: a well-prepared woman is the most dangerous person in the room. And I was just getting started. They say a camera never lies, but I've learned cameras don't speak either. You can silence someone just as effectively with a lens as with a locked door. The wedding stream replay had been looping in my browser for an hour. I'd taken to watching it in silence, not because I enjoyed the sight, but because I was looking for clues. If you want to see the soul of a family, watch what they do when they think you're not watching. I paused at the 38-minute mark, behind Sienna's glossy shoulder during the flower toss. I spotted it. A large framed display, mounted on a wooden easel, stood to the left of the aisle. Black and white portraits, arranged in neat rows, each labeled with gold embossed lettering, generations of Shore legacy. I leaned in. Top left corner, a stern-faced man in uniform, Darren's grandfather. Just beneath that, a photo I recognized in an instant. Our wedding photo, except something was wrong. It was cropped, my face gone. Only his shoulder remained, like I was never there. I clicked back 5 seconds, then 10. My stomach tightened. Another photo, Darren, as a baby, on someone's lap. I knew that arm. I remembered the bracelet. It was mine. But the face cradling him had been replaced, feathered out into a blur of soft tones that resembled his father's second wife, a woman who didn't enter Darren's life until he was 12. I snapped the laptop shut. My hands weren't trembling, not because I wasn't furious. I was, but because the anger had calcified, like stone in my chest. I opened the drawer, beside the dining table. A green leather photo album, cracked at the spine, thudded onto the wood. I opened to the 3rd page. There we were, me, cradling my infant son. No blur, no digital cleanup, just truth, printed on Kodak matte. A ping broke the silence. Finn had texted me, "Grandma, you seeing the part W? The photo wall. Pretty cool, right?" I stared at the message for a long time. "Cool, right," I typed slowly. "Where did those photos come from?" He replied instantly. "Dad said Sienna had them restored. Said some were too old-fashioned. Needed touching up for aesthetic." Restored. That was one way to describe erasure. I called him, straight to voicemail. I waited, then texted, "Finn, were they all edited? Be honest." He left me on read. I got up and walked to the hallway, where the original versions still hung, in dusty frames. Not fancy, not high resolution, but real. The worst part wasn't that they had removed me. It was that they'd used the photos I had taken, developed, printed. I was the only one in the family who knew how to use a darkroom back then. I spent nights elbow deep in Fixer, drying photos with clothespins strung across the basement. They used my work, my hands, my legacy, and cut me from every frame. I turned back to the table. The album sat open, the pages curling. There, tucked in the back cover, was a sealed envelope I hadn't seen in years, marked, "Original negatives, Shore Family Series, do not discard." I stared at it, then I slipped it into my purse. The next morning, I called the Photoshop on Mill Street. They'd digitized old film reels for me last year. "Yes, Mrs. Shore, we still do restorations. Or reversals, if that's what you need." I booked the next available slot. The technician was young, polite. I handed over the envelope and the photo album. He scanned through the negatives. "These are in great condition. You want them restored to digital?" "No," I said. "I want them printed, as is, full frame, no cropping." He raised an eyebrow. "Classic look, honest look." He nodded. "We'll have them ready by Thursday." I walked home with the receipt in my coat pocket and a storm pressing behind my ribs. Back at the house, I opened the laptop again. The wedding video had racked up thousands of views. Sienna's influencer caption read, "We built our ceremony around legacy, tradition, and healing." Healing. I clicked through to her Instagram. There it was, again, a carousel of the same photos, posted with filters. The caption read, "From generations of love, we rise." I looked at the comment section. Amazing lineage. So classy. Love the aesthetic. Your mill must be so proud. There wasn't a single tag, not one mention of me. In the final photo of the carousel, a graphic in white serif font overlaid the image. Legacy is what we choose to remember. I stared at that for a long time. No, legacy is what we choose to preserve even when it's inconvenient. I picked up the phone, called Darren. No answer. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. Third time, he picked up. Mom, I saw the photos. Pause. Sienna worked really hard on the visuals. She wanted you. Erased me. Come on. No one erased anyone. The design team just cleaned up some of the older images to match the I took those photos. Darren, every single one. I know the originals. I own the negatives. He went quiet. You think I wouldn't notice that the woman holding you at your baptism suddenly had blonde curls? That my own wedding photo now shows an empty shoulder where I used to be? Mom, you're overreacting. It was an aesthetic decision. No, Darren. It was a decision to rewrite. He exhaled hard. Look, this wasn't personal. Sienna wanted to create a consistent tone. The wedding's gone viral. There's a brand to protect. These choices weren't about you. I know, I said. They were about erasing me. The line went dead. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat with the green album, flipping page after page until dawn. On Thursday, I picked up the prints. 12 8x10s, full bleed, matte finish, me, cradling Darren, me and my husband, arm in arm, outside the old brick house. Me standing in the hospital hallway when Finn was born, eyes swollen, smile cracked but genuine. I didn't cry. I arranged them in a portfolio, sealed it, and labeled it in neat script. For when memory fails, and truth must speak, I set it aside. Then I opened my email, searched for a folder I hadn't looked at in over a decade. There it was, an email thread between me, my late husband, and our lawyer, rejoined to state, and special clauses, confidential. I clicked open the PDF, attached to the last message. Pages of legal language scrolled down my screen, but I only needed one line, highlighted in yellow by my husband years ago. In the event that any immediate heir actively excludes the spouse from a significant family event, defined as marriage, death, or legacy commemoration, the final clause shall activate, granting surviving spouse sole discretionary authority over the dispersed estate. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then, I clicked forward. To Marla Holtzman. Subject: Final clause. Activation required message. Marla, we need to talk. I have the photos, and the exclusion is now a matter of record. I hit send, and then, for the first time in days, I smiled. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted history mine to live. I was still staring at the framed photo behind the altar when the camera panned to Finn. He stepped up to the microphone, cheeks red, tie crooked, eyes bouncing between the screen and someone behind the camera. Sienna, probably, his cue card handler. My grandmother, he began, then paused. My inspiration. I sat up straighter. The room behind him went quiet. He looked directly into the lens. There was a woman who taught me how to ask better questions, to listen before speaking, to care about people you don't understand yet. She used to say. He paused again, voice trembling. She said, kindness without attention is just noise, but if you really look at someone, really see them, then it means something. My hand froze on the mug. That sentence, word for word from the note. I wrote Finn when he was 6. He'd been suspended for pushing another boy down at recess. I gave him a photo I'd taken of a squirrel he liked in our backyard, and that note, he carried it in his lunchbox for years. I never published it, never said it to anyone else, he continued. There are people who show you how to be human, just by being themselves. You don't always say thank you. Sometimes you forget they're there, but they stay, anyway. So today, I just want to say thank you. He didn't cry, neither did I, but my fingers tightened around the mug until the ceramic creaked. Not from grief. From the silence that followed, because not once did he say my name. No, Evelyn. Number, Grandma, just a woman. The camera shifted to Sienna, nodding encouragingly, then Darren, his arm around her waist, proud. The audience clapped. Not one face looked confused. No one whispered, wait, where is she? Because they had all agreed to forget. I set the mug down and stood, walked to the study, turned on the old Dell desktop I hadn't used in years. I had left it intact after George died, as if deleting his files would erase him completely. It booted, slower than my kettle boiled, but it worked. I opened Outlook, typed in a name, Marla Johnston. And there it was. An email chain dated 12 years ago. Subject, Shore Estate Final Version. My husband's signature. Scanned. My own, Marla's, reply with the draft attached. And one line I had completely forgotten. Clause 12. Should any direct family member be willfully and explicitly excluded from a major family milestone defined as wedding, birth, funeral, surviving cosigners may request reallocation of distributable assets under silent authority. I clicked on the PDF. There it was, in legalese. A clause George had insisted on. If they ever tried to write you out, he had told me, we write you back in. Hard. I never thought I'd use it, but I'd been written out in real time. Broadcast. 200s. I called Marla's old office. The receptionist said she'd retired, but still took legacy clients. Gave me a number. I dialed. She picked up. Marla, this is Evelyn Shore. There was a pause. Evelyn. Good heavens. I haven't heard your voice since the plaque ceremony. I didn't waste time. I'm invoking clause 12. Another pause. This one longer. Then her tone changed. Tell me everything. I told her about the live stream, the missing invitation, the photo wall without my face, the speech Finn gave my words, no attribution. She asked 3 questions. Was the event publicly broadcast? Was I biologically and legally recognized as a direct relation? Had I funded any portion of the event directly or indirectly? I answered yes to all. Marla exhaled. Then it's active. You have grounds. Will they fight it? I asked. They'll try, she said, but unless they can prove mental incompetence or that you dispersed funds knowingly as a gift, they won't get far. I turned back to the monitor. Finn was stepping down. Sienna was waving a drone operator toward the balcony. Let's activate it. I'll draft a notice today, she said. You'll need to sign in person. I'll be there at 10. She chuckled, still punctual. I didn't chuckle back. I went upstairs. Took down the fireproof lockbox George had bolted to the inside of the linen closet, entered the path, pulled out our marriage certificate, house deed, a handful of joint statements with his name still intact. I glanced at the closet floor. An old photo album lay flattened under a stack of sheets. One from the early 90s, back when photos were matte, not filtered. I flipped through it. Darren's high school graduation, my sister's wedding, my 50th birthday. Then I found it. A photo of me, holding a toddler Finn at the zoo, elephant behind us, both of us grinning through popsicle stains, and behind it, the original copy of the note. I slipped both into a folder. Then I printed out a still from the live stream. The one where Finn quoted me, standing under the string lights. I printed them side by side, labeled them, dated them. I didn't cry, but I felt something rise. Not pain, not pride, a current, a quiet force. The same one that made me pack lunches for 20 years. Save grocery receipts in envelopes. Sew holes in socks even after I could afford new ones. Resolve. 10 sharp letters. No one thanks you for. At 10:03 the next morning, Marla slid a thick document across her desk. Sign here to initiate the asset reversal. I paused. Will this affect the business account? Yes, she said, but only if Darren's access was conditional on joint consent, which it was. I signed. She notarized. I'll send a courtesy copy to his lawyer, she said, and the title office. They'll start the freeze immediately. I placed the folder of photos on her desk. Also include those. She raised an eyebrow. You want to make it personal? No, I said. I want to make it real. Back home, I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, clicked the live stream replay, fast-forwarded to Finn's speech, watched it again. Then I uploaded a clip to a secure folder, one with restricted viewing access, attached it to a draft email, addressed to one person. Myself, subject line. For when they ask who I was, I didn't hit send. Not yet. The wedding hashtags were flooding Instagram now. Hashtag Langshore 2025. Hashtag built not born. Hashtag new legacy. I saw the photos. Sienna tossing her bouquet off a yacht. Darren in a tux, grinning with his college friends. Not a single caption mentioned my name. Not one comment asking where the groom's mother was. That was the part that stung most. Not being excluded, but being forgotten so efficiently. It took effort to erase me. Time, software, planning. They didn't just forget. They erased. But George had planned for that. So had I. I closed the laptop, and I waited. I stood outside, Marla's office for a full minute before knocking. She was the only one I trusted with this. She had been our attorney for decades through the mortgage, the refinancing, the living wills. If there was anyone who could tell me if I still had a say in my own life, it was her. She opened the door herself. Her hair had turned completely silver since I last saw her, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. "Evelyn," she said, surprised. "I haven't seen you since his funeral." I finished. "I need your help." Inside, her office still smelled like dry paper and lemon polish. She offered me tea. I declined. I wasn't here to reminisce. I handed her the manila folder. It contained a copy of the will Edward and I had signed together, back when Darren was still building his company from the garage. Marla read in silence. Her brow twitched slightly at the last page. "This clause," she said. "You added this together." "Yes, Ed wrote it after we saw what happened to the Hendersons. You remember. Their daughter got remarried and froze her mother out entirely. Ed said, if our son ever does that to you, you don't sit quietly and wither away. You hit back." Marla nodded, tracing her finger over the line that read, "In the event that either party is publicly or legally excluded from a significant family milestone, wedding, birth, funeral, or inheritance, the excluded party gains full decision-making power over all jointly held and trust-bound assets." You never revoked this. "No, but I thought it wouldn't come to that." Marla sat back. "Tell me everything." I laid it out. The Livestream invite, the erased photos, the speech built from my own letters without attribution, the money I hadn't approved leaving my account. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she sighed. "This clause holds. It's buried under years of updates, but it was never rescinded. So what does that mean?" "It means the house, the retirement accounts, the education trust for Finn. If they're still connected to Ed's original estate, and you've been publicly excluded, you have grounds. I don't want revenge. I want clarity and control. He made me invisible. You have both now, but we need to act fast." She pulled out her laptop. In 15 minutes, we began the process to revoke Darren's administrative access on the joint accounts. His name had only remained there as a courtesy to make transfers easier during Ed's cancer treatments. We never formalized full control. To him. Then came the trusts. Finn's college fund had been rerouted through Darren's holding company, but the origin was still tied to the Shore Family Educational Trust, of which I was, by Ed's design, the trustee in case of a dispute. "The paper trail won't lie," Marla said, "and Darren never finalized the asset conversion to his name. He just used it." She tapped a few keys and turned the screen. "Would you like to reassign the beneficiary?" I looked at her. "To whom?" "To yourself, temporarily." I nodded. "Do it?" Marla clicked. I left her office just before sunset. The air felt different. Not lighter, just real. The way truth often feels after too many days of pretending. At home, I brewed myself a cup of tea I hadn't wanted earlier, sat on the couch, turned on the TV just for the noise. I didn't cry. There wasn't sadness left, only cold recognition. I opened my email, drafted one with the subject line, "Clarification of Estate Control, Shore Family Holdings." I addressed it to Darren and copied my financial advisor. The body was brief. Per the original terms outlined in the 1993 will of Edward Shore, and in light of my exclusion from your wedding, I am reinstating full authority over the jointly held assets and trust-based allocations. Please direct all further inquiries through legal counsel. I hit send. Less than 2 minutes later, my phone rang. His name lit up the screen. I let it ring. Then again. I still didn't pick up. An email came through. "What is this? Call me." Then, another. "Mom, this isn't what you think." And finally, "We can fix this. Don't do anything rash." I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled out the keyring from the drawer. 2 keys I hadn't touched in years. The one to the safety deposit box at First Town Bank, and the spare to the garden gate. I placed them in a small envelope, labeled it, "For when I leave." The next morning, I went to the bank. The manager, Mr. Ames, remembered me. He brought me to the vault with the soft reverence people reserve for someone they think might break if spoken to too loudly. Inside the box were the last original documents Ed had signed, not the copies his signature in blue ink. I took them, made new scans, left the originals in place. At the counter, I requested a full account migration, shifted everything from the Shore joint family account to a new one in my name alone. I closed the old one. Later that week, I visited the deed office. The house, as it turned out, still carried Ed's name beside mine. Darren had attempted to shift it through a temporary conservatorship filing 2 years ago, claiming it would help me streamline retirement benefits, but it was never finalized. I paid the administrative fee, filed to affirm sole ownership. When I got home, I changed the locks, quietly, methodically. By Friday, the mail had started to look different. No more family bank statements. No more automatic withdrawals to Darren's LLC instead. There was a letter from the county confirming my change in property title. A week passed, then another. The wedding album was posted online. I wasn't in it, not even as a footnote, but I wasn't erased, just ... redacted. Still, legally, I was everywhere. My name reattached to every line Darren had tried to scrub. Marla emailed me, "Would you like to designate a new secondary beneficiary?" I replied, "Not yet." I needed them to sit with the silence. Let the absence echo louder than any protest. Let the clause do its work. I stood in the hallway that night, looking at the empty nail where our old family photo used to hang. I'd taken it down myself, not in anger, just readiness. Then I opened the drawer where I kept my Camara, the one I'd used for years, the one they'd borrowed all the family photos from. I picked it up. It still worked. The light still found its way through the lens. For the first time in a long time, I began to imagine what it would feel like to take a picture for no one but myself. I had not stepped into St. Paul's in over a decade. The paint had peeled on the right arch, and the bells no longer rang every Sunday, but the heavy oak doors creaked open the same way they did when I carried Darren down that center aisle in a baptism gown, far too long for his kicking legs. The sanctuary was empty, save for the soft shuffle of shoes. I followed the sound to the back hall. "Evelyn Shore," said Reverend Cooper without turning. He stood beside a filing cabinet, one hand resting on a drawer labeled Events Archives. "You always did walk too quietly. I always figured you'd hear me anyway," I replied. He chuckled, low and warm, still sharp. "What brings you back?" I didn't smile. I held out the photo print from the Livestream, the edited one, where my arms didn't exist and Darren floated in midair at his christening. "I'm not in this." He took it gently, his eyes narrowing. "You were the only one in the frame, Evelyn." "I know." He walked past me and bolted the sanctuary doors. Then he gestured to the table by the stained glass. "Sit, I'll get it." I didn't ask what it was. Reverend Cooper had married me in Frank, buried Frank, and baptized our only son. If he said he had something, he had it. When he returned, he placed a thin manila envelope before me. Inside was the photo, the original, printed on fiber-based paper, edges worn soft. My arms cradled Darren. My face wasn't polished, and the light from the stained glass made my hair glow silver. "There you are," he said simply. I held it in both hands, careful not to bend it. "Do you have a scanner? Old one in the back office? Can you send it to me?" I met his eyes. "Now." He didn't ask why. Didn't prod. Just nodded, picked it up, and disappeared down the hallway. While I waited, the bells outside clanged once, not for service, but to remind the town the hour had passed. I glanced down at my phone. The reception at the wedding had just begun. That meant the big screens were rolling, the hashtags were climbing, and Sienna's Instagram was surely pulsing with curated warmth. They didn't want to erase me quietly. They wanted to pretend I was never there to begin with. The Reverend returned minutes later. "Sent to your email. Subject line says, proof." I pulled out my phone and opened it. Attached was the scanned image, high resolution. He'd cleaned the dust without scrubbing the truth. "Would you be willing," I said slowly, "to email it again, but to someone else?" His eyes flicked up. "Who?" "The Livestream coordinator. The company handling the broadcast." He whistled. "You trying to crash a wedding, Evelyn?" "No," I said. "I'm correcting a story." He didn't speak for a while, just studied my face. Then he went back into the office. I forwarded him the event contact info Darren had included in the mass email invitation, the only courtesy they'd extended. 5 minutes later, the photo was on its way again. This time, to a screen where 200 guests and tens of thousands of strangers were watching the edited version of our family's history. "Thank you," I told him. Reverend Cooper gave me a long look. "They'll be mad." "They should be," I said. "But not at me." I stood. "Can I keep the original?" "Please do," he said. "You were the one who took most of our church photos back then." You're part of the reason we have a record at all. That stayed with me as I walked back to my car. By the time I got home and opened the live stream, the reception had gone into full swing. Sienna had changed into her second dress. Silk, backless. Something you wear when you're not worried about hugging your husband's grandmother. Darren stood on stage, microphone in hand. We want to thank all the people who shaped us, he said. Those who believed in legacy and taught us to move forward with grace. Sienna smiled beside him. I watched her blink upward as her image flashed on the central screen. Then, something shifted on a side screen, the one previously used for menu highlights and decorative family montages. A new image loaded. It wasn't part of the planned slideshow. There I was, 28 years younger, hair tied up, arms wrapped around baby Darren. We were standing in this very church, a blur of pews in the background, a man in robes pouring holy water, Frank visible at the edge, blurry but grinning. The image stayed up for exactly 12 seconds, just long enough for a few guests to whisper, just long enough for Sienna's eyes to narrow, just long enough for the coordinator behind the camera to freeze, unsure whether to cut the feed or let it roll. No one dared stop the main show, but a ripple started. Comments in the livestream chat paused. One person typed, "Was that her mom?" Another, "Who's the woman holding Darren?" And then, "That pic wasn't in the montage earlier." I didn't type anything. I didn't need to. The seed was in. They'd edited me out. But now, they couldn't stop people from wondering why. Backstage, I imagined Darren panicking, Sienna calculating, Finn probably glancing at his phone, seeing the image explode across Twitter by someone who'd screenshot it fast. You can't unshow the truth once it's out there, especially when it's gentle, undeniable. A woman holding her baby in church. I logged out. Then I opened a second tab. My email with Marla, the lawyer, blinked at the top of my inbox. The attachment she'd sent earlier that day, scanned copies of the updated directive, sat waiting. The clause that gave me full control if I was ever excluded publicly. Her message had read, "I recommend timing this wisely. Let them feel the air shift." I clicked reply. Subject, re-final clause body, initiate transfer. Use attached list of beneficiaries. Do not notify Darren until confirmation is complete. I hit send. Then I stood up and opened the window. The air was light. Somewhere down the street, a sprinkler hit the pavement in rhythmic spurts. Inside, silence. No one yelled. No one knocked on my door. But somewhere across the city, I knew Darren felt it. Not my voice, not my anger, just my absence returning, unmistakable and impossible to crop out. I didn't wear black that day, not because I wasn't grieving, but because I wasn't mourning anymore. Grief is quiet. What I felt now had volume. I chose navy, pressed blouse, hair set in rollers the night before. I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, I don't look like someone whose name just got erased from her own family tree. I look like the woman who planted it. The email to Marla had gone out the night before. The subject line, execute final clause, simple, no flourish, no explanation. She didn't need one. At exactly 11:30 a.m., while the bride and groom posed for another drone shot under a faux wisteria arch, Marla clicked send from her end. The subject, notice of beneficiary transfer, Evelyn Shore Living Trust. The recipients, every guest whose email was registered through the wedding RSVP site, all 147 of them, including Darren, including Sienna, including the photographer, the makeup artist, and the damn florist who never met me but still called me aesthetic risk in a group text. Finn accidentally forwarded. I didn't need to yell. I just needed the truth to land, at the right time, with the right silence following. It was 11:34 when Darren's eyes darted to his phone. I saw it happen on the screen. He had been thanking the legacy of love and sacrifice that brought us here. My face stayed flat. The audience clapped. But he stopped, just for a second. A flicker. His mouth twitched. A misstep in a sentence too polished. Sienna touched his elbow. He smiled again, mask back on, but the damage had begun. 2 minutes later, a whisper passed between groomsmen. The officiant glanced down at his iPad. One of the bridesmaids squinted at her phone, then at the couple, then at her phone again. Back at home, I sat with my tea cooling beside me, laptop open, live running quiet. The document was short. 1 page, formal, legal, blunt, effective immediately. The following transfers have been enacted under the Evelyn Shore Living Trust, primary, Residence reverts to sole ownership under Evelyn Shore, designated beneficiary for all joint accounts. Updated, grantor retains right to reassign secondary assets, access revoked. Darren Shore. Sienna Lang signed, notarized. Timestamp, unmistakable. It didn't make a sound when it hit inboxes, but I imagine it felt loud, like a dropped glass in a silent room. I hadn't stolen anything back. I had simply closed the gate that should never have been opened without me. At 11:45, the camera cut to the reception tent. Long tables, coordinated napkin folds, personalized name cards. Sienna's voice echoed through the speakers, thanking her self-made tribe, the women who rose without crutches, the influencers who inspired her to curate the life she deserved, curated, a life that had to be edited to keep me out. Finn texted me at noon. Did you do something? I typed back. I did what they made room for. He didn't respond. I watched him from the stream. He wasn't talking to anyone. His plate was untouched. His phone face down on the table. I remembered him at 5, crying because he couldn't tie his shoes, then hugging me for an hour, when I didn't laugh. I clicked open the spreadsheet Marla had sent me that morning. There, line by line, were the changes we'd made. The summer cabin in Vermont, now allocated to a foundation supporting single elderly women who had outlived both family and retirement. The rental duplex, signed over to a community housing trust. The education fund Darren never used, redirected to a scholarship for first-generation college students with aging parents. None of it out of spite, all of it out of clarity. They had used my past to fund their future. Now, I'd made sure I was part of what came next, just not in the way they had imagined. At 1:10, Darren finally stepped aside from the crowd and made a call. His back was to the camera, but I saw his hand go to his jaw, a habit from childhood, something he did when trying not to shout. I didn't answer. He called again at 1:12, then again at 1:14. I let them ring. At 1:18, a different number called, unknown. I picked up, Mrs. Short. It was a woman's voice, slight accent, controlled tone. This is Alina from Banktrust Legal. We received an urgent request from Mr. Shore regarding account access. I just need to confirm it's already confirmed, I said. My lawyer sent all documentation. Unless this is a fraud investigation, I won't be answering further questions. Click. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I stood and walked to the front door, locked it, slid the chain in place. Not out of fear, but finality. At 2 p.m. The final image from the wedding stream showed a group photo under a banner that read, New Chapter, New Name, New Legacy. Legacy.igacy.I. Turned off the laptop. My house. My name on the deed again was quiet, just the clock ticking, and the late summer light pouring through the lace curtain. Outside, my hydrangeas had started to bloom again. Resilient things, cut them back too hard, they grow fiercer next season. I made myself a sandwich. When I returned to the living room, there was a voicemail from Darren. Mom, I don't know what this is. I wish you'd said something before taking it this far. I thought we had an understanding. Can we talk before lawyers get involved again? This is still our family. Please, call me back. There was no sorry. No, I shouldn't have. Only disbelief that I had dared to do what I had every right to. He still thought this was about money. It wasn't. It was about a seat at the table, a name in the story, a face in the frame. I hadn't taken anything from them. I had removed myself from their version of events, and taken back the truth. That evening, I changed the locks. Not out of fear, out of necessity. The house was mine again. That meant protecting it. Finn texted again. Later, people are posting weird things. Someone said you were in a photo on the screen. I didn't reply. Let them wonder. Let them ask. Let them Google who Evelyn Shore is and find something real. I walked to the bookshelf and picked up the frame I had pulled out from the back of a drawer the day before, wood slightly chipped. Inside it, the photo of me in the pew, cradling newborn Darren after his baptism. Reverend Cooper had mailed it yesterday. Untouched. I placed it back where it belonged at the center of the mantel. Not because it was sentimental, but because it was proof. You don't get to rewrite history just because your mother doesn't match your brand palette. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was a different number. Sienna's assistant. Deleted. Outside, the porch light flicked on. I hadn't said it. It was motion sensor. Just a raccoon, maybe. Or a neighbor walking their dog. The world kept turning. My name was still Evelyn Shore. And now, It was printed again, on everything that mattered. Not out of nostalgia, out of justice, out of fact. I poured myself a glass of water and sat down. Not to rest or to wait the morning after the wedding. My front gate camera pinged. I half expected it to be a delivery. Maybe someone had sent me leftover cake in a half-hearted gesture. But there was nothing but wind, empty, quiet, not even a bird perched on the fence. It had been 36 hours since Darren's voice echoed through the speakers, thanking everyone for being a part of our legacy. Everyone but me. I hadn't received a single call. Not from Darren, not from Sienna, not from Finn. That part, I expected. They were probably busy curating their captions. What I hadn't expected was what showed up in my inbox later that day. A video link, forwarded by a name I didn't recognize. Tanya Carville. The subject line read simply, "You were glowing in this." The video was a snippet, just under 20 seconds, taken during the church livestream. I hadn't noticed it at the time. I'd been too focused on the official stream. But someone had panned their phone toward the auxiliary screen. The one Reverend Cooper had plugged the photo into. It was the photo of me holding Darren, fresh out of the baptismal water, his tiny hand clenched around my finger. And in the recording, a woman's voice gasped, "Wait, is that his mom?" That was all. 20 seconds. But it had already been reposted. First to a private group about wedding marketing ethics, then to a subreddit. Then, as I found out later, to a TikTok account named @TruthBehindTheAesthetic. They single quotes captioned it, "The grandmother they never mentioned." At first, I sat still, watching the view count tick up. 15,000, 22,000, 48. Then the comments began to swell. They really edited her out of the photos. That's her. Wait, that's his mom. This is why older people don't trust us. I didn't smile. Not yet. I'd lived long enough to know that internet sympathy is slippery. But I saved the video to 3 locations. That evening, Finn sent a text. "Finn, hey Gran, you okay?" It took him 3 hours to follow up. Finn, I didn't know about the photos, I swear. I didn't reply, not out of cruelty. I needed time to decide what I was responding as. The grandmother, the investor, the woman who got cut. Instead, I went to the hallway. There was a frame, stored behind the coat rack, wood, slightly chipped, the backing secured with yellowed tape. I opened it. Inside, the original set of photos from Darren's graduation. I'd taken them, printed them, given copies to every relative who showed up that day. Sienna had cropped those 2 in the slideshow at the wedding. I remembered it clearly now. They'd used the one where he tossed his cap. I was standing to his left, cropped out. I carried the frame to the living room and placed it on the mantel. Not to make a statement, just to see how it looked. The next morning, a new email. Subject, pending collaboration concern, your input requested. It was from an assistant producer at a podcast I'd never heard of. Apparently, Sienna had scheduled a post-wedding episode, something about navigating generational wounds with grace. But the producer, it turned out, had seen the viral clip. They were reconsidering the angle. Would I like to give a statement? No, I wouldn't. I didn't need to give a statement. I just needed not to vanish. By Thursday, a microblog had picked up the story. Headline, "The Invisible Matriarch, When Legacy Becomes Aesthetic." A quote from an anonymous guest claimed that Evelyn, rumored to be the actual source of the groom's college fund, had not been acknowledged once during the wedding. They didn't even get my age right. Said I was 84. I let it go. Instead, I called Marla. Is there any legal reason I can't forward the new beneficiary list to their PR agency? A pause. Then, technically, it's your discretion. It's your trust. Why? No reason, I said. Just want them to have clarity. I sent it that afternoon. CCD, their agent. No threats, no anger. Just a clean PDF of the updated paperwork. And one line, for transparency. Since the word legacy has been used so often, that night, Sienna blocked me on every platform. 2 days later, Darren called. "Mom, Darren, I didn't know Reverend Cooper still had that photo." He did. Silence. "You could have come," he said eventually, "but you didn't. You didn't invite me. I sent you the stream. And you used my money," I said, without telling me. He exhaled. A breath of someone trying very hard not to sound defensive. "You don't understand how these things work now. Sienna has a brand. It's complicated." "I'm not complicated, Darren. I'm your mother." His tone shifted, just slightly, like he'd rehearsed the next part. "Do Do you want to meet up? Talk? We can figure something out. Maybe lunch. Next week. I'm unavailable, I said. My calendar's full. Doing what? I let the silence answer for me. After we hung up, I walked out to the porch. The light was softer now, the wind gentler. Across the street, the neighbor's daughter was teaching her toddler how to ride a scooter. He fell once, then got up, wobbled forward again. For a moment, I remembered Darren at that age. The scraped knees, the tantrums over buttoned shirts, the way he used to sit on my lap during Sunday cartoons. Not nostalgia, just data, memory. That weekend, someone, I still don't know who, made a side-by-side video, Sienna's wedding slideshow, next to the original, unedited family photos. Mine included. No dramatic music, no captions, just truth. I didn't share it, didn't need to. By Sunday, it had 2.4 million views. People started tagging brands, asking questions, wondering aloud if legacy meant anything anymore. I kept the frame on the mantel, moved it slightly to the left. I didn't need the world to love me. I just needed the silence to stop being so one-sided. The day after the wedding, I sat at the small oak table in my kitchen, the one with the scratches Darren made as a boy. A mug of tea steamed beside me, untouched. The morning light poured through the window like any other, warm, familiar. You'd think the world had gone on, and it had. Just without me. No one had called, not Darren, not Sienna, not even Finn, who had once cried when I missed his first school play. The silence wasn't surprising, but it did confirm one thing. I had finally become too inconvenient to include, too difficult to explain, too off-brand to mention. But they couldn't stop what had already been seen. By 9 a.m., the screenshot had been reposted on 6 different Facebook groups, then on Reddit. A woman holding her baby son at a baptism. Simple, black and white, but unmistakable. The comments started, "Wait, isn't that the groom as a baby? And why wasn't she at the wedding?" Someone dug up my maiden name from an old City Records post. Then the threads unraveled. I didn't need to respond. The internet did the rest. By noon, an account calling itself @ Forgotten Matriarch posted a stitched clip, Sienna's curated wedding montage, followed by my image at the baptism. Then the clipped livestream where I was never named, only quoted. The caption read, "Erased, but not forgotten." I didn't share it, but someone did. Someone who had been there. I recognized her face in the background of the livestream. Claudia, my old neighbor, now just a friend of the venue on Sienna's list. She'd seen me in the photo and recognized the baby. She remembered holding Darren at my kitchen table while I made soup after his first stomach flu. I hadn't even known she was invited. By late afternoon, my email pinged, an apology from the event photographer. "I didn't realize they'd edited you out. I was just following instructions." Attached was a folder, unedited originals. I downloaded each photo slowly. There, I was, beside Harold, with Darren, on my lap. At his high school graduation. In front of the bakery we used to visit after Sunday Mass. Image by image, the truth returned. Not dramatic, just undeniable. I printed only one. The frame was still dusty. From the attic, hand-carved oak, a wedding gift from Harold's uncle. I cleaned it gently, slid the photo in, and placed it back in the center of the living room wall. No announcement, no vindication speech, no knocking on their door, demanding acknowledgement. But that frame untouched, unedited would be the first thing Finn saw if he ever came by again. That night, the security system pinged. Darren tried to access the front gate. The code had been changed. He didn't ring, just stood outside the gate for 3 minutes, then left. A day later, a letter arrived, in the mailbox. No stamp, just folded, handwritten, his handwriting. It began with Mom, but never made it past I didn't realize. I didn't reply. Some things don't need answers, they just need to be felt. I started sorting books the next morning. Donation piles, heap piles. The house, once filled with decades of accumulated loyalty, was becoming lighter, not emptier, just mine. I kept the frame, the original documents, and one of the baptismal letters Finn never knew I'd saved. The rest could go. As I vacuumed under the couch, my phone buzzed. A message from Marla. Media request. "They want to interview you." Decline. I typed, "Yes," then added, "but send the article when it's up." I made a cup of tea and stood at the window, watching the garden. The ivy had crept further up the back fence. I let it. They say the worst thing that can happen to a mother is to lose her child. But I've learned there's something colder than death, being alive and erased from their story. Darren wasn't cruel, not openly. He didn't yell or insult. He just adjusted. Soft deletions. First it was decisions made without asking. Then events I wasn't told about. Then the story of our family, retold without my part in it. The most dangerous kind of neglect isn't loud. It's polished, practical, well justified. It comes with smiling explanations like, "We didn't want to burden you," or "It was just better this way." For years, I stayed quiet. I told myself it was respect. Then I realized it was fear. Fear of being too loud, too old, too there. So I made myself smaller. Until one day, they didn't even notice I was gone. And that was the moment I remembered who I used to be. The woman who could manage a city department with one phone and a broken stapler. The woman who raised a son without ever missing a mortgage payment. The woman who taught that son how to read a map before he rewrote it to leave her out. So I didn't scream. I just opened the final clause. And now, I want to say this to anyone watching who's felt that same silence, that gentle, smiling kind of exile. You are not too much. You are not outdated. You are not inconvenient. You are the frame. And they don't get to crop you out. If they do, find the clause, change the locks, and put your picture back up on the wall. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If you'd like to witness the next one, you know where the subscribe button is.